Welcome back to Memos to the President. I'm Ylli with the Special Competitive Studies Project. It's really an honor and a pleasure to welcome to the show today my good friend Anshu Roy from Rhombus Power. Anshu, finally, welcome.
Thank you, Ylli. It's just such a pleasure to be here with you.
We have known each other for many, many years, and we have a lot of mutual friends that I think we both respect. And I think the last 5 years, really, it has been an honor to see you, your company grow, to achieve something unimaginable before the AI really became mainstream. And I also love your story. I've interviewed you many times on stage, and we've been part of the panels together for many, many times. But I love to hear the story of how you study, how you came to America, because we're both immigrants, how you came to America, how you studied what you studied, and then how you decided to pivot towards building a company that is focused on defense of our country.
Wow, yeah, so that's a capture of the last 25 years of my life. That's great. So, I came to America a quarter century ago. I was obsessed with the idea of learning more, gaining more knowledge. I love science, and I wanted to be very good at something. And many years ago, my dad said to me, you talk well, so go find something to say. So I followed that advice, and then yes, I went to Michigan. I studied chemical engineering. I studied turbulence and instabilities in complex systems, and
which comes handy today with your application.
That's right. We live in interesting times, right. And that became the basis for what I thought would be the rest of my life. But in a strange nonlinear way, it led me to a Nobel laureate who was working on semiconducting polymers, and I decided I would work with him, Alan Heeger. And then after that, I have 4 years of postdoctoral work.
Right.
I wanted to...
Where did you do that? Because I think...
This was 2006 to 10.
Right. But I think you did in California, right?
This was Santa Barbara.
Right.
Not just California. Yeah, by the beach.
Right.
And that was enjoyable, and I had offers to become a professor, as normally happens in all the dream schools I could imagine. I just didn't want it anymore. And I think what I was really honing on was impact.
Right.
I needed to see impact. And that's what led me to creating Rhombus Power, which the first 5 or 7 years of Rhombus was spent on commercializing a neutron sensor that I invented. Mm-hmm. And I did that out of my apartment in Mountain View.
Right.
I never knew it would take me where I am today.
Right.
And that was a successful endeavor. And then in 2015-16 timeframe, DIUX was established.
Right.
And
I had Bob work in the show here, and I worked for him when he and Dr. Ash Carter established DIU.
Wow.
So,
yes.
Yes, so and I'm familiar with that time.
Ash Carter's vision is what we are actually riding on today. Right. And so I was the first entrepreneur to knock on their door.
Can you describe that a little bit? What did you have as an application, and who answered the door?
Well, so I knocked the door, and a security guard opened it, and it was right next to our office in Moffett Field, NASA. And he said, yes. And I said, I'm looking for DIUX. And he was very puzzled. He didn't know what that meant.
Right. Because there was the Army office, that one of the offices was
it was a recruitment center for the Army. And there was this guy standing behind him. He said, oh, that'll be me.
Yeah. Who was that? Was it Raj?
That was my good friend Bucky.
Oh, okay, Bucky.
Yes. And then Bucky literally opened the door, and he said, he introduced ourselves, and we became good friends. And after that, I think they were trying to formulate what they were trying to say about what they wanted, right? Fundamentally, they were looking for good people.
Yeah.
And then they were looking for good technology, and then they were looking for finding ways to bring them into the defense area. Right. In hindsight, looks like we fit the bill. check. And that led to a series of prototypes that we did with them on different use cases, but all on one philosophical theme. How do we take data and convert that to decisions?
Right.
With speed, clarity, and foresight.
Right.
That's what this was about.
Yeah.
So in 4 years, we had developed a platform where data was integrated in interesting ways for a variety of use cases. So we had created these assets now, data assets, correct, curated data assets that were not randomly, ontologically just kind of connected. Oh, I'm going to connect your data. Connect for what?
Right.
Well, for what is what should define how you connect things. And so we were able to then take that and start to scale that inside the DoD through a production contract that the Air Force signed, and then the rest is what you see today.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about the early days of really engaging with government in terms of a contracting side? Because I think we've moved beyond like the early pains you have had, but I think we still have serious challenges there in terms of adoption, in terms of procurement and acquisition. So can you talk about your experience there, engaging with government? Maybe even share some of your experiences the first time you presented your application, because I know it's an amazing application, but if you live in the bubble, you don't understand that the world has moved on and there are incredible applications that can do foresight, decision making, and give you the decision advantage. So if you can share some of those early experiences you've had working with DoD in particular.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the first experience, which captures much of where I think the DoD and the IC was at that time. This is 2016-17 timeframe, and at that time we were doing some work with the NRO, and there was an RFP issued, which was one page only, which is what I loved about them, by the way. Incredible. And they gave us a contract to show us what we could do with data. Visualizing 1 billion data points, predicting outcomes, and quantifying the uncertainty in our own estimates. 3 things.
Right.
Later on, it turned out that I was supposed to check only one.
So you checked all 3?
I checked all 3. So anyway.
Overachiever, aren't you?
Too much. So they gave us a shot, which is wonderful.
Right.
And then but then what do you do with it, right? You get a little bit of money, you can build a prototype. What am I going to visualize?
Right.
What data? What predictions? That's when I met, through DIUX actually, Sam Araki.
Oh, okay.
He walked into my life, this 86-year-old man, and he says to me, I heard you guys are working with NRO. I said, hello, Sam, my name is Anshu.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, my name is Sam. Please have a seat. And I didn't even know who this guy was, right? Except that this old gentleman had walked into my office. And he began to just show up every single day. And then he started to tell me that, I get this sense, I've lived through this many, many times. The DoD is trying to reinvent itself.
Right.
And it's a very large organization, so it takes time.
Biggest bureaucracy in the world, yeah.
And he's like, Anshu, you may not see it, but what you are really living is the reinvention of the DoD. And with that mindset, when we approached it, we basically we looked back in time and we did the Arab Spring, took it as an example. And of course, back studies tend to be, it's biased generally. But what you're really after is to figure out, could data tell us something we didn't know, right? At the heart of it, which is really at the heart of all AI, AGI. We're kind of all itching to do that. Turns out there was another phraseology for it. It doesn't have to be AI. It's called modeling.
Right.
And that is something that we mastered as a result of our experiences. So we built this system, and that became very successful. It didn't continue because, it was just one of those innovation things. So talk about procurement, right? You do innovation for what? Who's going to use it? Who's going to adopt it? Nothing. And I won't say we weren't interested in asking those questions. Ylli, we didn't even know how to ask those questions, right? It was just one use case after another, right? So all the challenges I see as an entrepreneur, when we look back, I can say, oh my gosh, that was challenging. In the moment, though, it
Right.
was all just very exciting.
Right.
And so we were just solving problems after problems, and we just kept going. And I said to myself, just watching how Silicon Valley was kind of evolving from sort of the compute thing was just exploding,
Right.
and memory was exploding, everything was exploding. And we knew that as cloud gained more and more traction, the value of commercial data would continue to go up. And the more we keep connecting it in the right ways, the more powerful this asset gets.
Right.
So we kept working that, right? That's at the heart of it. If you ask me, what does Rhombus do? What value does it add? It's in that intelligent data
Right.
that we've created. It's
Yeah.
not data for intelligence.
Yeah.
It is intelligent data
Yeah.
that you can now
And you
use.
built this, I have to say, like, you have built this repository for years.
That's right.
You
It's
have
to
trained
10
it,
years.
you have curated, and like, you're really focused on that piece.
Totally focused on it.
Yeah.
So that building those
And
applications.
you kept adding layers of data over the years.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been studying consciousness for many years, right?
Interesting.
Theoretically, neurologically, and so on. And there's this one sort of more debunked theory about consciousness that the more layers you add, the more conscious you make a system.
Interesting.
It wasn't until that kind of vertical connections that you draw between those layers that you begin to really see a system come alive in an interesting
Yeah.
way for your use cases. And we began to see that happen,
Yeah.
and it began to surprise us. Patterns began to surprise us.
Right.
We were first of all surprised at how well those predictions were doing. It was not planned. It was just an experiment.
Yeah.
It succeeded. Okay, well, if it is working, then why is it working? And we started to get into the depths of it. And we realized that it is seeing patterns that were just simply missed by experts, more or less.
Right.
Well, what does that teach us? It teaches us that we can actually get inside the planning cycle of various organizations.
Right.
You know what I mean, like China or whatever.
Right.
And actually get inside the thinking. Yes, we cannot get into intentions. Nobody can. But we can get into the execution of that intention.
Exactly.
And so that is where
Right.
we realized we can buy decision makers as well as operators the one asset that everyone prizes:
Exactly.
time.
Exactly.
We can buy them time.
Yeah.
And so that is where
And the more time they have, the more time you have to prepare. You have more time to respond. No, I think I'm with you there. I think the open source intelligence, indications and warning, is the one area that I think AI is fundamentally going to change the future of the intelligence community.
absolutely. But then the question becomes, hey, how do you take this to market
Exactly.
in the right way,
Right.
right? And it
When
took-
you face the acquisition challenges,
That's right.
all the challenges in terms of government procurement, yeah.
Right. In the light of
Right,
all of that,
right.
you can take it to market, and now okay, go raise a bunch of money, and now
Right.
what are you sitting on it, right? Because it takes time,
Yeah.
and then you realize you need to hack procurement.
Right.
And you need to hack it the way DIU has done it, and other organizations have done it. AFWorks has done it.
Right.
Many other people have done it. I think for my advice to most companies is look for those avenues, but more importantly, focus very hard on bringing true value beyond the buzz,
Right.
beyond the publicity, all of those things, right? Focus on value creation,
Right.
because at the end of the day, this is one country where true value creation still in the end wins.
Yeah, it matters. And I have to give it to you because like for many, many years you have operated not in a stealth mode, because I mean you were out there, you spoke at our summits, but you were not there bragging about your product, overselling your product. To your point, you were really focused on the value and the impact it can have for our national defense. Which brings me to the most impactful case I've seen from you a couple of years ago, and
Right.
you spoke about this publicly many times, so this is no secret now. But I remember in February of 2022, we hosted you here in the SCSP office in Crystal City.
January.
You're right. In January 2022, and you presented us with what at that time you had everything around Russian military presence, behavior around Ukrainian border or portions of Ukrainian border. And I remember, like today, one of my colleagues asked you, when do you think Russia will invade Ukraine? And I think you said in 31 days. And I think you missed it by a day.
Yes.
And I use this example time and again. Even today, I use this example to indicate how much you were spot on. First of all, with your analysis. Second of all, if people have not seen your platform, there are many YouTube videos where you demonstrate your platform. You have your website, but it's more than, like we get exposed here to a lot of AI companies. You have a demo, you have a platform and a dashboard, which I really like because it's easy to understand what's going on. So do you want to talk a little bit about that case? Because I think it's really famous, at least for me, to show me the power of open source intelligence.
Absolutely. So Ylli, thanks for that question, and thanks for back in January 2022 for in public putting the spotlight on me and asking me that question. It was terrifying. Thank you very much. But because I didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
But I realized, just looking into your face, I realized this guy is not going to settle for a non-answer. So I went for it.
Yeah.
And I told you what we thought the calculations were saying. We were seeing a spot, if you remember, in our aggression prediction model that we have on our product, a spot right on Kiev. And that is what drew your attention to say, why Kiev? What is going on there? And the reason we were what was unique about what we were able to do was not just predict that Russia would attack. Almost everybody could have said, yes, this might happen.
Right.
But we were able to say when. It's a little bit like saying tomorrow it's going to rain versus right. So the reason we were able to do that is because we were operating entirely from what the machine was telling us, a proven system. But what it was telling us, back to surprises and how it was teaching us what we didn't know. And what it had done is it had seen patterns of objects, people showing up at various locations from it has 5,000 plus sensors, so it is able to do that. And it was remarking that this is highly anomalous. And the last time this happened, you got your Crimea. The last time it happened, you got your Georgia, you got your Syria, and so on and so forth. And so it knows all of that, and it also knows all the military drills that they've ever done. Right. In other words, it's become it's a brain.
Right.
And it remembers everything, unlike you and me. Right. So it always is able to go back and say, wait a minute, because you've given me very curated, clean data that you've connected in interesting ways through my help, this is the natural extrapolation of what this means.
Right.
Did I believe it though, as a human being? Mm-hmm. I gave you the answer. But if you were to really sort of sit down for coffee with me and ask, do you believe it, Anshu? I would have probably said, maybe, man, I don't know, but that's what this is saying.
Right.
And that's really powerful
It's
stuff.
very powerful. And this is like more than 15 days in a prediction.
Right.
That is, I think, the sweet spot that everybody will look into, getting some kind of intelligence warning, anything to give you a heads up that this might happen.
To tell you the stats of it, by the way, the Japanese, they use our system. We have an international business now, and we have a Rhombus Japan, which deals with that. In 2023 alone, we made 3,200 forecasts through our system, and over 2,500 of those turned out to be correct.
Can you repeat that again? You said 3,300 predictions.
Yes, predictions.
Right.
2,500 turned out to be correct.
Incredible.
Right. So now we're at a way better than coin toss at an aggregate level.
Yeah, you're right.
If any of the listeners understand theory of probability, they will really value what this means. It's not a one-time show. Over the course of a year, one after the other, being right more than 7 out of 10 times.
It's incredible.
Is incredible. It is valuable. And the time horizon of that varied between 30 days and 6 months, by the way. So we also predict political unrest, like Bangladesh happened, or the Japan change happened, or recently changes in Europe that happened. All of those are good examples of how we were able to provide and just actually produce reports on it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just about, also I want to mention, it's not just about predicting one thing. I also have to tell you why. Because you can't do much without that. It's going to rain because it's cloudy. That's the easy part, right? There's a storm building.
Right.
I need to tell you everything about it.
Right.
Our system does that.
Yeah.
And then it is transparent. It goes back to the sources. You can see the homework. So we built it in a way for it to be trusted. That's at the heart of all of this.
So Anshu, as I mentioned, that Russia moment for me was an eye-opening. I mean, until that moment, I knew you were building a great company. You had amazing models, but the fact that you were able to predict, in that close proximity, that Russia will invade Ukraine, I think for a lot of us here was an eye-opening. And I use that example, as you know, almost every day with anybody that tries to convince me that AI is not the future when it comes to predictive analytics, modeling, indications, and warning. But since that moment, you have taken the company to different levels. Can you talk a little bit about the other platforms you have built, other applications that you have seen, and just how you have expanded the business in the meantime?
Absolutely. So I'll name a few. First of all, post-Russia prediction, what we were able to do is expand the business into Asia, and now we have a very solid client in Japan, and we are stabilized over there, budgetarily speaking, which is very important for companies like us. We are able to now, with that anchor customer in Asia, we are able to now expand to Taiwan, India, the Philippines, South Korea. I think we have them surrounded, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that coordination this can create and the synchronization of action is at the heart of what I believe is very powerful from a US perspective. But for those countries, here in America, you see, we are blessed with too much of a lot of things, right? Data is one of them.
Right.
Inundated, too many sensors. And we talk about sense making here. Those countries don't have the sensors.
Right.
How does a soldier figure out in the Himalayas in India what the mechanized infantry on the other side of the border is doing?
Right.
They don't have eyes.
Exactly.
And so
or China moving their troops somewhere else for the purposes of the same exercise.
Exactly. Yeah. And what does the movement along the Indo-China border tell us about what might happen in Taiwan, as you're alluding?
Exactly.
So what we are now able to do for those countries is not just, we're able to give them the sensors. And that comes as part of the product, right? So they love that.
Right.
And they love the fact that it's already proven and they just have to subscribe.
Yeah.
So talk about the acquisition challenge of this, how to hack that. Well, you have to take a chance and you have to spend the time and you have to find a way to, so you need the staying power to ultimately deliver the value that people are looking for.
Right.
This is a hard area. I don't recommend it for everyone.
No, I understand. Yeah. And I think one key thing that you didn't mention there, which I think, and I've been to all these countries I think you mentioned, is operating under a common operating picture is a tremendous value when you face a challenge on the security domain.
Absolutely.
Because not everybody has the same information, as you noted. Not everybody sees the same threat as you see it. And so putting allies and partners on the same page, that what we are seeing, they're also seeing through your platform, I think, from my experience talking to people in the region, has an enormous advantages.
Big time.
Because then it gets us to do planning and response much more effectively and together. And so that is, I think, the one area.
So can I take it from common operating picture to a predictive common operating picture?
No, that's a better, better definition.
Right. So that we get the time we need to coordinate actions. I mean,
Exactly.
within one government, it's hard enough to coordinate.
Exactly. Let alone
multiple.
And when English is not the commonly used language among all these countries.
Right.
So it's a tremendous asset, I think, in this pre-conflict indications and warning phase, in which I think everybody has to understand what's going on in the region with regard to the security environment. My other question to you is, you have seen a huge potential in this space.
Yep.
And I know you're busy because you're always on travel and you're always like doing the presentation. But where do you see the potential for this as the next step?
Yeah. So what I do see is beyond the application we just talked about, the next step for this is a couple of different areas emerge from here. The first one is the fusion of in-country data. It's not like they have no data. There is data. Right. So here in the US we have data, other countries have data, but more importantly, they have knowledge, local knowledge on how their adversary, this common adversary, is operating. Right. Imagine now if multiple countries are feeding their insights and knowledge into the system, how quickly the network effect kicks in. Right? It's N square immediately. Right. And so that creates a lot of power for anybody else who wants to join this US and allies network, right? Okay, so that's one part. The next part is, if I now think about the US side, and I think about where does the kill chain really begin?
Yeah.
Well, the kill chain begins with the money.
Right.
So we have to do a much smarter job of figuring out how to invest into our defense areas, right? And our investments have to be outcomes based.
Right.
Well, in this administration, more so than before, I mean, publicly at least, I'm hearing that there's a strong focus on readiness and lethality, and readiness is a big theme. Right now, if you tie all that together, take it to the state level and really get into it, in the current environment where a lot of these things are changing, cuts are happening and so on, it becomes that much more important to bring in, it not just becomes important to bring in automation, it creates a unique opportunity for automation, right? So automation and then build artificial intelligence on top of that. I think that's where a lot of the value will get created for the United States in the next few years.
No, I agree with you. So Anshu, we talked a lot about international crisis. This administration, the Trump administration, as you know, is focused on the border security. And not just with the flow of illegal immigration, but also the flow of, fentanyl. In my mind, your application is ripe for these kind of predictive movements, behavior, and whatnot. Can you tell us more about the opportunities you see to use Rhombus Power application towards this problem set?
Okay, I think there's so much, but I'll tell you what happened in 2019, and this is published. When fentanyl was first becoming a huge problem in the United States, we built an application that automatically maps out in a dynamic way, right? All of the illicit actors involved in fentanyl, from production to distribution to retail, right? And there were thousands and thousands and thousands of them. Combining everything we've scoured the open web for and the dark web for. When you put that picture together in a usable way, what emerged from that was a 900% increase in the number of illicit actors that the US government knew about. And that resulted in a 100% increase in arrests. So ask me why the difference. 900, 100. Well, here's the problem. We were generating more leads than they could process.
Interesting.
Right? So we saw the power, and all of this happened, you know how long it took? 4 months.
4 months.
In 4 months, right? All the way to China. The connections were made all the way to China.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, what we are seeing happening today at the border and all the things that this administration is trying to do with, I must admit, a lot of boldness, is the cartels are involved in this fentanyl and other nexus, human trafficking, all this whole gamut of transnational crimes, right? In 2019, we had shown the cartels that are actually involved and what are the other things they are doing. I call them the FedEx of the illegal system. They carry anything, right? That's how they make money. Right. The cartel violence in Sinaloa right now, our system predicts that it will remain at crisis levels well into 2025.
Interesting.
That's our prediction.
Right.
Okay. And it's driven mostly by their internal fragmentation and those kinds of things. Okay, so if, let's say, the US wants to surge pressure on these cartels, right? Let's take Sinaloa as an example, wants to figure out when to engage bilaterally with the government over there, how to anticipate the destabilization at the border and things like that. How do you answer those questions quickly? Our system can do that, right? It's the when that really matters, how much that really matters, right? And increasingly, the other side to it, which is supply chains today, right? Economics and security have never been so coupled as today. And what we are seeing now is we uniquely have the ability to show those relationships in a way that is actionable. How? Well, we all understand that tariffs will have impact.
Right.
Nobody wants to tell you how much, by when, where can I change things? Okay, there's a certain playbook at work here. Let's figure out when, where, how, by how much, and so on, right? Those are the key questions. We can help address that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a role for AI in a dynamic way. It's not a theoretical way, oh, I'm a big company, I'll write a report and give it to you.
Right.
It changes on a daily basis.
I mean, like, we're talking about, predictive behavior, all these things that I think would make decision makers get ahead of the problem.
That's right.
And address it,
And address it and also find prescriptive ways to do that, right?
Exactly.
The system can tell them, here are the levers to adjust. Conflicts are happening globally. Stabilization is really important. Right. How do you do it? What drivers are? Where do you invest? Where do you take money away from? Right?
Yeah. And I remember when you did the Bangladesh, I think, scenario,
that's right.
Which was not a security-related incident or something like that. It was the internal, situation that was boiling over a certain period of time that I think you were able to figure out and identify those social elements that were boiling underneath the political system that led them to that change in Bangladesh.
A very famous external affairs minister, who you know and I know very well, asked me this question. He said, Anshu, if you had come to me in the 90s and told me that Bangladesh is going to go unstable, I would have said, yeah, you have a point, but I don't know what to do about it.
Right.
So his point was, can you tell me what to do about it?
Yeah.
And I immediately said, our system is telling you these three things. Okay. One is a factor you can't control, climate. Okay. The others you can, such as you can change export policy, you can set prices in certain ways for certain grains and so on and so forth. And he's like, those are all doable things. I wish I had known.
Right.
And so that's where, you begin to, when you get that appreciation from that senior level, you see what entrepreneurs rarely see, hope.
Right.
You see hope.
Solution. Also,
you've given them something they can work with.
Right.
The challenges remain, and in this second Trump administration, I think they'll become hopefully easier because the urgency and the willingness and the boldness that there is, I mean, it's evident everywhere. These are natural risk takers, and with risk comes reward. Also problems, sure. But I think there's a strong desire to cut through bureaucratic resistance, which I think will be very helpful for not just me, but many like me.
Right.
Artificial intelligence cannot replace the government, but it can empower it.
Exactly.
That's where we come in.
Right.
The cultural changes needed, however, there has never been a better time, I think, in America to actually act on it. And I think we are poised to take advantage of that.
On that note, Anshu, I really want to thank you. I know we can continue this conversation because I really enjoy, and I've enjoyed your friendship and professionalism over the years, and what you've built is really remarkable. So I really want to thank you on a personal level, that having seen you grow and build an incredible team that you have with an incredible application that you have, it's really a joy to watch. And I wish you all the best.
Ylli, if I may, thank you very much as well for the strong friendship we've built over the last several years. I really think that we are headed towards an era where organizations like SCSP, in particular your organization, is so uniquely positioned to bring about transformative change and awareness in particular at the right levels. And to the extent that we can play a small part in that, I'm most humbled to do it.
Thank you so much, Anshu. For those of you watching, thank you so much. This was Anshu Roy with Rhombus Power. Until next time, have a good day.